Hiber-Nation 25. Grizzly's Growls presents Stories from the Hiber-Nation. A handy guide for beggars, especially those of the poetic fraternity, by Vachel Lindsay. Part 2. A Mendicant Pilgrimage in the East. The old gentleman with the lantern, and the people of his household. Part 2. By the light of the lantern. The lantern was carried, as I finally discovered, by an old man getting a basket of chips near the barn gate. He had his eye on me as I leaned over the fence. He swung the lantern closer. "My name is Nicholas," I said. "I am a professional tramp." "Well," he said slowly, in question, and then in exclamation. He flashed the lantern in my face. "Come in. Sit down." We were together on the chip pile. He did not ask me to split kindling or saw wood. Few people ever do. In appearance, he was the old John G. Whittier type of educated laboring man, only more eagle-like. He spoke to me in a kingly, prophetic manner, developed, I have no doubt, by a lifetime of unquestioned predominance at prayer meeting and at the communion table. It was the sonorous, agricultural, holy tone that is the particular aversion of a certain pagan type of city radical who does not understand that the meeting house is the very rock of the agricultural social system. As far as I am concerned, if this manner be worn by a kindly old man, it inspires me with respect and delight. In a slow and gracious way, he separated his syllables. "Young man, you are perfectly welcome to shelter if we are only sure you will not do us an injury. My age and experience ought to count for a little, and I assure you that most free travelers abuse hospitality. But wait until my daughter-in-law comes." I was shivering with weariness, and my wet feet wanted to get to a stove at once. I did not feel so much like talking someone to death as I had a while back. By way of passing the time, the patriarch showed me his cane. "Presented at the last Old Settlers picnic because I have been the president of the Old Settlers Association for 10 years. Young man, why don't you carry a cane?" "Why should I?" "Won't it help you keep off dogs?" I replied, "A housekeeper, if she is in a nervous condition, is apt to be afraid of a walking stick. Looks like a club. To carry something to keep off dogs is like carrying a lightning rod to keep off lightning. I encounter a lot of barking and thunder, but have never been bitten or blasted." And while I was thus laboring for the respect of the patriarch, the daughter-in-law stepped into the golden circle of the lantern light. She had just come from milking. I shall never forget those bashful, gleaming eyes peering out from the sunbonnet. Her sleeves were rolled to the shoulder. Startling indeed were those arms, as white as foaming milk. She set down the bucket with a big sigh of relaxation. She pushed back the sunbonnet to get a better look. The old man addressed her in an authoritative and confident way, as though she were a mere adjunct, a part of his hospitality. "Daughter, here is a good young man. He looks like a good young man, I think a student. You see, he has books in his pocket. He wants a night's lodging. Now, if he is a good young man, I think we can give him the bed in the spare room, and if he is a bad young man, I think there is enough rope in the barn to hang him before daylight." "Oh, yes, you can stay," she said brightly. "Have you had supper?" It is one of the obligations of the road to tell the whole truth, but in this case I lied. The woman was working too late. "Oh, yes, I've had supper," I said. And she carried the milk into the darkness. In the city, Among people having the status indicated by the big red barn and the enormous windmill and the most substantial fence, this gleaming woman would have languished in shelter. She would have played at many philanthropies, or gone to many study clubs, or have had many lovers. She would have been variously adventurous according to her corner of the town. Here, her paramour was work. He still caressed her, but would some day break her on the wheel. The old man sent me toward the front porch alone. There was a rolling back of the low gray clouds just then, and the coming of the moon. The moon's moods are so many. Tonight she took the forlornness out of the restless sky. She looked domestic as the lantern. Part 3. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. I was on the porch, scraping up an acquaintance with the grandmother. She held a baby in her lap. They sat in the crossing of the moonlight and the lamplight. There was no one to explain me. I explained myself. She eyed me angrily. She did not want me to shake hands with the baby. She asked concerning her daughter-in-law. And did she say you could stay? Well, she did. The grandmother brought a hard fist down on the arm of the chair. I'd like to break her neck. She's no more backbone than a rabbit. I do not distinctly remember any bitter old man I have met in my travels. She was the third bitter old woman. Probably with the same general experiences as her husband, she had digested them differently. She was on the shelf, but made for efficiency, and she was not run down. In her youth, her hair was probably red. Though she was plainly an old woman, it was the brown of middle age, with only a few streaks of gray. Under her roughness there were touches of a truly cultured accent and manner. I would have said that in youth she had what they call opportunities. I asked, "Isn't the moon fine tonight?" She replied, "Why don't you go to work?" I answered, "Well, I asked for work in the big city till I was worn to a thread, and you are the first person who has urged it on me since I took to tramping. I wonder why no one ever thought of it before." She smiled grudgingly. "What kind of work did you try to do in the city?" Well, I wanted to paint rainbows and gild sidewalks and blow bubbles for a living, but no one wanted me to. It's about all I'm fit for. Don't talk nonsense to me, young man. Pardon me, lady. I am a writer of rhymes. Nation's going to the dogs, she said. I suppose I was the principal symptom of national decay. Then a happy voice called through the house, "Come to supper." "That's for you," said the grandmother. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself." Thanks for listening to Stories from the Hiber-Nation. Comment on the website at grizzly.libsyn.com. This program is sponsored by donations from people like you and is released with a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.